have looked into my eyes. You have seen what I am, but still you're by my side, telling me I can't. And there are times I've caused you pain, and times I made mistakes. Somehow you use them all to make the eye you made. Oh, every good thing I have done, everything that I've become, everything.
Welcome to All About Us Teen Talk TV. We want to welcome you today. Today we have a couple of very special guests. But before we get to them, I want to remind you to order your All About Us Youth magazine. You can go to www.aaUYM.com. That again is www.aaUYM.com. If you have any questions during any time of the segment of the show, you can also tweet us at CJ@AAU Radio. Again, you can always tweet us at CJ@AAU Radio. And don't forget to get your book, Something to Make a Bird Sing. That is our book of the month by author Renanka Ward. Again, Something to Make a Bird Sing. It's about struggles going through everyday life and perseverance and overcoming obstacles and permission to forgive yourself. This is actually a good read for the month, Something to Make a Bird Sing. We also have another book, 101 Truths by Melanie Thomas, which is an excellent source of encouragement for every day. I'm not going to give you one today. Is truth number 32. Truth is your passion. Truth is your passion is your drive. Examine yourself and identify your passion. What motivates you? What gives you a feeling of gratification? Find this passion, fuel it, and allow your passion to take you to higher heights. Again, that is 101 Truths for You by Melanie Thomas. And this is a good read. Both of them are our books for the month. You can also find them on our website at www.aaUYM.com. Today, we are going to be discussing Behind the Prison Walls. It's a special project and a special man that has put this together, Mr. Lorenzo Steele, who is going to be our guest for today. And we're going to just talk about behind the prison walls. We're going to try to cover a lot of different topics, so sit back. And if you have any questions, don't forget to tweet us, CJ@AAU Radio. I want to welcome you, Mr. Lorenzo Steele, for coming and joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And also a familiar face, Mr. William Portwine, who also will be joining in the conversation. But today we have Mr. Lorenzo Steele, and we're going to be talking about behind the prison walls. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into our topic for today.
Like I said, thank you again for having me on the show. My name is Lorenzo Steele Jr., and I'm a former New York City Department Correction Officer. From 1987 to 1999, I worked in the nation's most violent adolescent prison on Rikers Island, called C-74. While working inside of Rikers Island, I used to take my camera inside of the prison to capture images while in prison, and leaving after 12 years because I just couldn't take it anymore. But now I'm realizing that there was a higher calling on my life that I had to experience those 12 years. I had to go into hell to actually see what hell is like. And now what I do now is I mentor and I provide information about what really takes place in prison. Because if you analyze what's going around us, the average person doesn't really know what takes place in prison unless they're a correction officer, unless they're an officer. And then those people have to share that information, those traumatic experiences that happen while in there, and not too many people are doing that. So after leaving after 12 years, I realized I had viable information that could possibly keep people out of prison, and just letting them know that prison is the last place on earth that you ever want to go to.
Okay, now you explained to me what was the purpose of the project. Mm-hmm. So since starting this particular project, what kind of responses have you gotten from the youth in the community?
The response has just been tremendous and godly. Imagine walking into communities and, you know, fathers are thanking you because I went into one of their child's schools and they come home and say, a correction officer came into the school, was talking about prison, and he showed you the cuttings and stabbings, and he gave us some real information, and now I'm going to start taking school serious. So the information is just tremendous. And with the exhibition, it's actually a exhibition where those same images that I took while I was on Rikers Island, I packaged them up. So now I have them on easels. So in the inner cities inside of New York City, your Brownsville, your Bed-Stuy, your East New York, those communities that are considered classified as high crime areas, meaning there's over policing in those neighborhoods, high arrests, literacy is very low, and those are the communities that I go to because those are the communities that actually populate those 72 prisons upstate. So I take those, the same images and lay them right on the sidewalk. And you could imagine people just walking by. You have to come up and see the images because you want to know why is that guy behind bars? So imagine a whole family that come up and, sir, why do you have those pictures out here? And then I'm actually explaining to the man. And then now his son is there, so I'm actually walking his son through the actual process of destruction, and you know, hoping that he'll be enlightened with the information that he has, so he can make change.
What is the youngest ages that you have shown your presentation to? Your
My presentation. First of all, I'm also a vendor for the Board of Ed, so I actually go into the public school systems and do workshops, do life skill workshops, conflict resolution with children, because I bring a different spin to the Board of Ed because my spin and my uniqueness comes from the consequences of. What are the consequences of if you don't take school serious? What are the consequences of if you don't listen to your mother and father? What are the consequences of it if you break the law? And, you know, everybody else could say, well, you're going to go to jail, but if you don't have anything to visually look at or touch, that doesn't mean anything to you. So those images, I showed him. I said, young man, these people that are in these behind these prisons, within the cells, they all broke the law. They didn't listen to their parents. They didn't take school serious. And these are the circumstances that they're going to have to go through.
What grades do you work with? That's what I'm trying to get at. What grades?
Pre-K all the way up to high school and college. I also take the program inside of college. I'm in New Rochelle College. I work with their criminal justice program, giving a different spin on the criminal justice system coming from a correction officer. And I'm also a criminal justice major myself. I went back to college after many, many years, and I'm pursuing my degree in criminology.
I'm just curious, out of the responses from the kindergartners, what are some of the responses that you get?
The responses, you know, from the babies, you can't get too graphic with the babies. You know, you can't go in there and
go home
get raped, and you're gonna get violated if you go to jail. So you gotta bring it down to their level. If you don't listen to mommy, you don't listen to daddy. There's bad places that you can go to that you won't be with mommy and daddy. And like I said, as the kids get older, then you can get a little more graphic. And depending on your audience.
What are the ages that you're finding that you have to really get graphic with
We
the
have
kids?
to, depending on parental consent, depending on the school, if mom or pop knows that their child is already at risk, he's talking back to them at home, he doesn't want to do homework, telling you what he's not going to do, he's not taking school serious, the school is calling 3 times a week, Mrs. Steele, can you please help me with my son or my daughter?
Gotcha.
So we're talking about those young ages, because those young ages, this is where we're losing them.
Yeah, we're losing our kids at a rapid rate. And just to see that everything is going around in the world today, I mean, this won't even touch some of what is really going on. We'll get into that a little bit if we have time. But why don't you just get in a little bit into your presentation now, and then we'll continue to talk.
Okay, I'm gonna go through a couple of slides that I actually have in the exhibition inside of schools.
Okay.
This is a picture right here, me in my uniform. I like to, I'm a very visual person. I'm a photographer. I was born a photographer. So I use visual images to let people know, okay, he was a correction officer. This right here is a map of all the prisons that are in America. And if you could, I can't read it from here, but as of now, we have over 2.4 million people that are incarcerated in America's prisons across America. Prison is a business. And
Yes.
you know what I stress to families, educators, professors, prison is a business. And the first stop, first introduction is that arrest. Once you go through the arrest, you have the police, then you have the courts, then you have the correction officer. I was on the end of the business part of the criminal justice system where I used to, watch the inmates. But it starts with that police, that first police arrest.
Wow. In 1990, 57,000. And we are now tripled,
Quadrupled, yes.
quadrupled.
And that number's going up.
Yes.
It's really going up. This right here is a map, going back into the business. This is a map of the adolescent detention centers that are in upstate New York. And if you notice that you have almost a prison in every county. So basically what that means is that's job opportunity for some people upstate. So when you look at it like that, you have somebody that's working 20 years just because somebody broke the law.
Now, that alone was just the adolescent group homes
Yes.
they had?
This was the adolescent detention centers in upstate New York, and these are the adult facilities in upstate New York. If you ever been to New York City, upstate New York, you notice that there's not too many jobs in those areas, but that prison. If you have a prison in your community, that's a lot of jobs. You have mothers, fathers, uncles, dogs, actually working in some of these prisons for up to 20 years.
And it's a family.
It's a family.
A family
Yes,
event,
it is.
I see. Wow.
And these are the communities. There are about 8 communities that these inmates come out of. Your Brownsville, your Bed-Stuy, your East New York, your South Jamaica, Queens, and certain spots in Far Rockaway. And I never forget when I first saw these numbers, it bothered me because these are the same communities that are over-policed. And right about now, everyone's, still talking about just stop and frisk. And when you critically analyze stop and frisk is heavy in these communities.
Yes.
And it is actually now, ruled unconstitutional because 90% of those people that were stopped didn't even have anything on them. So if you look at it a little deeper than that, out of those 90% of those people that got stopped, how many people got locked up? See, a lot of people don't realize that first introduction into the criminal justice system is the arrest. And that comes at the discretion of that police officer. If he feels that, okay, he's black or he's Hispanic. And if you look at statistically, the criminal justice system disproportionately affects people of color. Yeah. So this thing has hidden meaning and it's very deep.
I'll just add to that. When you look at Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit, they're cutting budgets for schools and closing schools. And at the same time, they're pouring more money into policing those areas where they're closing the schools. So now you're starting to see the incarceration rate in those areas go up. So there's a hidden agenda there. If you look at LA, all these places, not just in New York alone, in the inner city communities, this is what's happening, even in Houston. You got a $10 million budget cut for the school, but you pour $85 million into police in these areas. So you're at a disadvantage.
Wow.
And it's intentionally being done. And you don't necessarily have to break the law. Anything can happen on any given day.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to add to that, to what Mr. Lorenzo Steele was saying here.
I was reading something before I came because, I like to do a little bit of research to be up on things. And it amazes me, the United States is the only country that houses this many prisoners.
It's big business.
And then we hear privatization.
Oh, yeah.
I've been hearing that a lot lately, especially with the city?
Let me break that down a little bit. A lot of people don't realize my generation of correction officers are retired now, and a lot of my buddies are retiring, and they're making well over $100,000 a year. So think about that as a business. Now, if they privatize the prisons, now they don't have to pay that large salary anymore. So now, if you want that job, you can take this correction officer job, $15 an hour, and we're going to give you benefits. Take it or leave it. So this is what's really going on. And also, now when you privatize a prison, it's almost like you're the boss of those inmates. So now what a lot of people don't realize is I have another piece that I'm working on called Parallel Worlds, comparing the prison system to slavery. And after leaving the Department of Corrections in 1999, I took a trip to Ghana, the slave dungeons in Ghana, and I actually videotaped and took photographs of the the slave dungeons. And I'm sitting home with all these images on the floor, and I said, wait a minute, the system has never changed.
Yes.
The system has never changed. They just changed the words around, and okay, blacks are free now, but if you look at it on paper, we're not free. And deeper than that, under the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, once you break the law, you become a slave again to the state property. So that means you're behind you're in prison working for sometimes 23 to 33 cents an hour. So imagine you have a grown man that's doing 20 years working for 23 cents an hour, and those same products that those slave wages are being sold for top dollar on the market by the state.
We are going to take a commercial break, and we will be right back after this message.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
Welcome back. We have Mr. Lorenzo Steele Jr. Behind the prison walls and Mr. William Portwine. We're going to continue our conversation going through your slides. We're going to be talking about consequences of violence. Let's go through these 5 slides and then we'll continue our conversation.
This right here is an image. It's a powerful image. It's an inmate looking out of the cell in a solitary confinement unit You're hearing a lot of talk now about youth in solitary confinement, and they actually ruled it that it was unconstitutional for an inmate, especially an adolescent, to be locked in a cell that's the size of a bathroom, 8 feet by 6 feet, for 23 hours, with 1 hour coming out. I used to work in that solitary confinement unit, and removing myself from corrections, I see it different now. When I had the uniform on, you know, counting my inmates that I was responsible for, you really don't think about, is it torture? What's going on with that young man mentally? Is he receiving services that he's supposed to? But after I removed myself from the Department of Corrections, I said, wait a minute, we had 14 and 15-year-olds locked in a cell for 23 hours. Many times they didn't have mental health officers coming by or guidance counselors coming by to check on these young, these young men. And it had to take some type of psychological effect on their minds, mentally and physically, for being locked in a cell for that long. So my stand now is that, yes, solitary confinement is cruel and inhumane, and no one should be, regardless of the charge, no one needs to be locked in a cell for 23 hours a day. We wouldn't lock a dog in a cell for 23 hours a day. Could you imagine that? You have thousands and thousands of people are protesting. How can you keep a dog? Those are that's cruel and inhumane. But we have millions of people that are behind bars that a lot of people are just forgetting about.
But you know, it's all because of the media shutout as well. You know, and the other thing, when you're talking about locking a person up for those amount of hours, think about this. The adolescent's with as a child, he gets locked up. Father gets in prison, and now you got a lot of women. So the whole family's going to jail. All of them has gone through this process. What is their family structure going to be like once they come out into the world?
But when that child, when like you said, when one person is locked up, the whole family's doing time.
You know, that's a thing that we need to address on another show. But talking about the family structure as far as, you know, what's going on within the family. But now that you see the families going to jail, it seems like a repetitive thing. It starts like welfare. You see welfare, and then the daughter's going on welfare. We can't break the cycle.
Yes.
At what point and where can we find a point to help these youth break this cycle?
But first, we have to realize that this is not new. You know, just like I said before, that project I'm working on now called Parallel Worlds. If you go back to the document, the Willie Lynch papers or the Willie Lynch letters, you can just Google it, Willie Lynch letters, and on paper it told you what they did to the black family. They purposely separated the black male out of the family unit, and allowed the mother to raise, especially the male children, by herself. So if you go back and analyze that, you say, wait a minute. If you look at, they say 70% of the families now are single parent moms that are not even married. So one of the things that we must realize is, you know, there are people out there that tell us, oh, we need to forget about the past. We need to forget about slavery. But that's the key, because that was the key for me. Because I did not learn about African history in high school. Believe it or not, I learned about African history from Public Enemy, KRS-One, and X-Clan, real rap, you know, and listening to them forced me to pick up a book to find out what are they talking about. The Greeks went over to Africa and were trained at the feet of the Egyptians, and everything the Greeks have was actually stolen from actually Africa. And there's a powerful book called Stolen Legacy, breaking it down with dates and how all your Greek philosophers went over to Africa to be trained. And you just ain't going to Africa and say, I want to be trained in this they call it the mystery system. You had to be a special person to go in there. So sometimes they waited 12, 15, 20 years before they even could go in to get the training. And then when they took it back to their own land, they was banished from their own land. So a lot of that is missing, and it must be it must be reanalyzed that that is our missing link, because knowing my history, working in the prison industrial complex, I said, wait a minute, this thing, slavery has never ended, you know, because the same conditions still exist today.
And just to add to what he said, he's talking of the slave dungeon in Ghana was actually called castles, because you can actually have 1,000 slaves in a dungeon, and it was situated where the slave master lived over top of them in luxury. And also what else happened here was at nighttime, they would bring the women up and they would have their way. And what happens is, before you even go through the door of no return, you're already pregnant with this man's child. And he gets you here to the States, takes away everything. Here in the United States was the worst place ever. We had 250 slave revolts. Most of them was very unsuccessful because of how they broke us up. If we came as a family, somebody bought us by the end of the week. If they couldn't afford 3 of us, they sold Lorenzo away.
Split the family up.
If the man that bought him couldn't afford him at the end of the week, sold him away. So they broke us up. They outlawed the African drum because that was the way that we called and spoke to each other. In the Caribbean, it was a little more looser because they tried to keep you together, because the slave owners there felt that if they kept the family together, they would be more productive. So if grandma went across the island, occasionally they would let you go see grandma, just to keep you working and keep you motivated and keep you going. Here it wasn't like that. So when you talk about the house Negro and the field Negro mentality, that's where that stems from, because I'm looking at you in the house and I'm going, well, she doesn't have the same tribal scars as me. And she's up there in that house. I'm in the field eating this horrible food. She got it good. You know what? I don't like her. I don't care about her. I got no allegiance to her. Don't know her. Don't want to know. You're looking out the house going, we're here now. I got it good. Master, they getting ready to revolt. So that's where a lot of this stuff stems from, breaking down the structure, family structure, and it just parlayed into the prison system.
Yeah.
Now, do they get education in the system? Are they
Adolescents.
Adolescents?
That's a very good question. Adolescents, by law, had to go to school. And I saw some things that blew my mind. We had more adolescents getting their GED at alarming numbers, because now you got to go to school. We wake you up, you got a correction officer actually inside the classroom. I think some of these schools, you might need correction officers in some of these classes, because these kids don't want to sit down and do the right thing and take school serious. But then on the second hand, when you had a youth in solitary confinement, they didn't go to school. So there's a lot of things that you don't know that, you know, really goes on in school. I mean, you know, within the prison system. But that's I read a lot of books in prison, you know, a lot of books. Sometimes I used to read for 8 to 16 hours a day, you know, so that's some real good time to, you know, actually do some reading and learning, yes.
Do you have a lot of repeat offenders?
Repeat offenders, it depends on the individual, and it depends on their case. Because if that young man broke the law and they gave him a felony, what type of job are you going to be able to get if you have a felony conviction?
Wow.
And so it's almost double jeopardy. Imagine doing 10 years in jail. You served your time, but now you come out of jail, but you got a felony on your back and nobody wants to hire you. So what used to bother me was like, how could this guy go in and out of jail, in and out of jail? But then it dawned on me, if nobody's going to hire you, you're tired of, you know, getting the door slammed on you. You want to work, you want to be a man, but, you know, in America, once you get that felony, it's very hard to get a job. So you know what? I'm gonna go back and do what I used to do. Maybe I'll get away with it this time. So that comes into play too. So if we really want to challenge this system, we need to look at that. If somebody breaks the law, I feel they need to be punished. But do they need to be punished for the rest of their life? You know, I'm 49 years old. Thank God I don't have any felonies. But every time I go fill out a job application, if I have to, Have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime? It follows you for the rest of your life. So that needs to be critically analyzed if we really want to, put people to work, or if we really want to stop people from, going in and out of prison.
I saw something alarming on Facebook. There was a 17-year-old. He had a credit card. He got charged with credit card fraud. They gave him 35 years for credit card fraud.
Well, the issue with the judicial system now, and he spoke a little bit about the 13th Amendment, but there's also a flip side to the 13th Amendment. Initially, a person with a title of nobility, lawyer, esquire, attorney, could not participate in government, which is partially what the War 1812 was about, because they burnt all our repositories, so that was lost. Now your Senate, your whole House is basically made up of what? Lawyers, esquires, ex-judges, you name it. And when you look at it, that comes from Great Britain, and a lot of people don't realize that the United States was incorporated in Great Britain in 1871. So that was a part of the deal with the Rothschilds coming in. So now what you have is, we're dealing with private international law with criminal penalties attached to it. That's why when you serve your time, even still, you got to come out and pay fines, maybe $1,500. But if you can't work, how do you get that? Because the system is not designed to rehabilitate you. It's designed to make you a perpetual slave, economic or otherwise.
And let me piggyback. We got time?
No, we need to take a commercial break,
Okay.
and we'll be right back after this commercial.
And that goes right back to...
Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Dow. We have a multidisciplinary practice in Melville and Ronkonkoma, New York, and we treat patients with many, many different conditions, from newborns through geriatric patients with numerous different techniques. There's a technique and a type of treatment for every class of patient. We have them all here. Here's my son Thomas, also a doctor of chiropractic, working on one of our patients' cervical spine. This patient has had chronic neck pain for many, many, many years, has been to a multitude of different practitioners with little or no response. And with our specialized techniques, she has improved tremendously and continues to improve on a daily basis. We have two practices, one in Melville and one in Ronkonkoma, New York. We are a multidiscipline chiropractic office. What that means is we have chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, psychologists, all working as a team and a network of outside professionals such as orthopedists and neurologists that we work hand in hand with to help determine what your injuries are and the best way to treat your injuries. I have the great pleasure of having my son in practice with me. We work hand in hand, father and son, to give our patients the best care possible, and a staff which is loving, caring, and you'll never have to wait at all in our office for service. Many times patients come into our office and they have what's called a soft tissue injury. Soft tissue injuries are like scars inside your body. If you've ever been cut on the outside of your body, you get a scar. The same thing happens inside of your body to your muscles and ligaments. So our job is to determine where those are, stretch the muscles, adjust the vertebra back into their correct position, and then refortify the normal structure with exercise. That's what we do best, and I hope someday you'll come see us at one of our two offices. Thank you.
Welcome back to All About Us Teen Talk TV. We're talking today with Mr. Lorenzo Steele behind these prison walls. We're going to continue with your presentation. Oh, did you have a statement that you wanted to finish, piggyback off of him before we go into this?
Oh, we'll get
Okay,
that.
no problem.
This right here is, this is not my physical image. This came out of a book called Women in Prison. And if you could, look closely at her hands, this is actually a pregnant teen that's shackled with handcuffs on while she's giving birth. So we have to critically analyze when they say, once you're convicted of a crime, you become state property again. This is legal in certain prisons, and thank God. I never worked with women prisoners, but I really don't think I could have actually sat there and tried to justify why this young girl has to be shackled. She's already in prison. She's 9 months pregnant. Why does she have to be shackled to a bedpost, giving birth? But this goes back into the hitting things that happen in prisons. And people have to really analyze as well. A lot of these prison shows, these Hollywood created shows that come on TV, don't really give that in-depth analysis of that. Could you imagine them doing a special just on women behind bars and looking at a woman that's 9 months pregnant with leg shackles on and shackles while she's actually walking down the corridor, and that's normal? So this is what's going on. So we have to pay attention to those that are in prison. And there's plenty of Bible scripture that talks about don't forget those people in prison.
Yes.
And we have to realize that a lot of our famous prophets actually did prison time.
Yes.
Jesus did prison time himself. So we cannot forget those that are in prison just because they're there. A lot of them are just there because they just can't post bail.
Yes.
This is another image right here. If you could look at her face, you can see the pain that's in her face. That's cruel right there. That's cruel.
Now, do they take them to the hospital?
The hospital is, she's in the hospital.
No, do they take them to the actual hospital to have the baby, or they have it in the prison?
That's a good question. Some, depending on the circumstances, you may give birth in the prison, or they may have to, be medical reasons have to take you out where they have more services at another hospital. But, the thing that bothers me is, why is she shackled and she's 9 months pregnant?
When I look at that image, it just reminds me of, it doesn't remind me because I wasn't in slavery, but it takes me to those images where you see everybody in the bottom of the ship.
Yeah.
And they all huddled up. It's basically inhumane conditions, and it's basically traumatization
for her and the baby. That's stress.
Here was the thing, and scientifically, this is what slave masters used to do when they basically tied the male to two ends of a horse and made them go in separate ways. If the woman was pregnant, they would force her to watch so that the adrenaline of fear would rush through her body and go to the fetus, so that the fetus would be traumatized before she even gave birth. So a lot of these things, like he's saying, is still relevant. There's really no difference between them.
Wow. Now, do they allow the women on Rikers to keep their babies? Do they have certain facilities?
Yes, they do. They have some of the state-of-the-art facilities, but check this out. Depending on how much time she has to do, and let's say she has to do a couple of years. Now, if there's no one that could take care of that baby, a family member that could take care of that baby, now that baby goes to foster care. And depending on how much time she has back into slavery, she could actually lose custody of her child. So that means you're standing in front of a judge and he's telling you that child is no longer yours. So if that's not a comparison, or if that's not a similarity between, the prison system and slavery, then come on.
It's called a ward of the court. What it means is you're mentally incapable of thinking on your own. The other term is called parens patriae, which means you're basically mentally retarded and you're no longer capable of handling your personal affairs. So the state of the court takes over for you.
Wow. Okay. Let's move on. Wow. I'm speechless. I have nothing, you know, when you, I mean, you think about this and when you, I mentor young women. You know, I think about going into depths of this, certain things that we engage in and I talk about, but just seeing these pictures and these images, and especially with dealing with some of the girls that I'm dealing with, because a lot of them, you know, go into the affiliation with gangs because their families, they feel separated and segregated from their families already. So then that pushes them even further into gangs. And just to think they're taking so many programs away, so many different things for these young people, and they feel hopeless. And they're to the point now where they're fearless.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at these kids now, the knockout, the stuff that they're doing on the streets, you know, I'm just looking at the images and it just brings me to the point of what these kids are doing to react to the situation that's going on. At what point are we going to take ownership for it?
Yeah.
You know, some of the onus we have to take ownership for, and we have to help these children focus on their vision, focus on their destiny.
A lot of your young girls, you need to look at the statistics on that population. Statistically is saying they're going to have 2 or 3 children. So imagine that at-risk female doesn't really know the consequences of her behavior, goes in and out of the court system. Now she's a mother now. So now who's going to hire her because she stole a phone or was getting into fights, or maybe she has a felony conviction. Now you slap that on and now she's a mother. So what type of, that's how the cycle keeps continuing. I definitely agree. We're going to have to take ownership amongst ourselves, and it's all hands on deck. And it could be, it's more serious than we'll ever be able to talk on this show. And when I say all hands on deck, I mean parents, I mean educators, I mean churches are going to have to open up these doors, and instead of Wednesday and Sunday and put the money in the pot, we're going to have to start creating programs and services in our church that could help ourselves, instead of begging somebody else to save our children, save our community, and they're not going to save it. You know, it's just as simple as that. So we're going to have to all sit down on this table and figure out what can you do to save somebody, because the blueprint was already laid. My favorite hero was Harriet Tubman. She laid it out. You know, brother, sister, you want to go to freedom? I'll help you get there. One part of my workshop is in Bed-Stuy, we're working with 10 males now, and we're going to follow those 10 males from middle school all the way up to college. So now imagine, what do you want to do? Mrs. Steele, I'm having problems reading. Now we bring in an English teacher that can sit down and get them up to par where they believe. Math is my problem. We have math people coming in. Brother, what's your specialty? I love, you know, computers. We have STEM consultants that have come in to be with that child to get him up into college. Now, time to go to college. He might be intimidated, just like I was, to fill out the financial application. I told my wife, I said, if you don't help me with this thing, I'm not going, because I was intimidated. So imagine you have your team that could actually sit down with the youth and walk them through that process to get them into college, and then we come in to motivate them into, you know, let me remind you that there was a time on paper where we were not allowed to read and learn.
Exactly.
And that goes back into our valuable history.
I have a radio show that I do every Friday as well. on Global Links Radio. And big shout out to Donnie Walker. Anyway, we talk about parental engagement, community engagement. It's very important that we step up as parents, because every time I go to the school, you know, because my kids are grown, they're 26 and 23, but I still go into the school, and they have a parent function. We have like 30 parents. When there's like, I don't know how many kids.
You have 30 parents?
About 30
I
parents
get 3.
That's
good.
As you know, a lot of the parents are leaving it up to the educator to raise their kids. Big mistake. Too many adults are blaming the children for the condition that they're in. Bad mistake. It's always easy to pass the buck, but there are certain things that your kids should know before they even get to school, period. You know, the basics. Are you putting that time in? There's no way in the world I can ridicule you as an educator, and I'm not doing my job as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I worked with Lorenzo, was it last year, the year before, we was in Brownsville, with the young men.
Mm-hmm.
And a simple question I asked them, what do you want to do?
Wow.
Faces lit up because they could now communicate what I wanted. I want to be a chef. I didn't hear anything about, it was chefs. I want to be an attorney. I want to be a scientist. I want to
carpenter.
I want to cure people. So you have to really nurture that and engage these children. We're too caught up in, oh, you're 7, you don't know what you want. Kids are far more intelligent.
They know what they want
today than more so than ever. So instead of nurturing that, we look at them as a 7-year-old and say, yeah, okay. Yeah, go back in the corner and play with your toys. Instead of nurturing that. And that's a big mistake that we make as parents overall.
That's true. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Welcome to Formula Auto Wash, where every day is a great day for a car wash. Open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Sundays 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Detailing packages for every budget, starting out at $29.99. 100% hand wash and detail centre. Horsehair and microfiber brushes and mitts. Proudly using Ecolab Blue Coral soaps and waxes. Formula Auto Wash has served the community for over 30 years. Senior discounts all day, every day. Ladies' Day Wednesday, $3 off any wash. Early bird discount Monday through Thursday till 9:30 a.m. Check out our website, formulaautowash.com.
I am Tom Mealy for the Harrison Law Group, and I have been telling you for years that getting involved in an automobile accident is no joke. This is what we do. We're not new at this game. If you've been involved in an accident of any kind, and you go to a law firm that says you have no case, it's simple. It's because they can't do it and they don't get it. You need to call us directly at 1-800-INJURY-LAW.
Are you planning an event and want to include entertainment, but you're not sure where to turn? Act1Entertainment.net has provided over 1,500 events with quality, affordable live entertainment at private parties, corporate affairs, festivals, bike rallies, and more. Act 1 will fit into your budget. They're friendly, reliable, and do all the legwork for you. They take all major credit cards. Log on to Act1Entertainment.net for a free, no-obligation price quote, or call 631-758-3505 for a brochure. You'll be happy you did.
Welcome back to All About Us Teen Talk TV. We're here with Mr. Lorenzo Steele, Mr. Portwan, and myself. We're talking about behind these prison walls. Mr. Steele is going to go over some in-depth things of weapons in prison right now. We're going to discuss a little bit. Go ahead, Mr. Steele.
Yes, we cannot, not talk about prison and not talk about the violence. And I stress to children, if you're looking at the show, violence does take place. I knew 14 and 15-year-olds that went to prison. Sometimes they just couldn't pay bail. And a lot of these guys took 25 years with them upstate. Just because of the violence that takes place. If somebody takes your sneakers, somebody takes your property, somebody tries to take your manhood, you're going to defend yourself. And by defending yourself, now you can get rearrested in the criminal justice system and actually catch another jail case. So we're going to look at some of the, another slide right here. This is actually a weapons board. These weapons that you're looking at right now, we used to take off of inmates. And when I say take off of inmates, I don't mean we shoot them 35 times or 50 times, reload. A correction officer, the only weapon a correction officer has is his mind, okay? And, there are ways that you can disarm someone without shooting them multiple times. So these are the weapons that we took off of inmates. These are all adolescent inmates that you're about to see that came through Rikers Island, made poor choices and poor decisions. Some of them, like I said before, some of them just couldn't pay bail. And, they went through the system. This young man right here, if you look at his arm, they took hot water from a hot water pot and put baby oil inside and actually threw it on his skin. Sometimes that's a tactic or technique that they use in prison, because once you throw the hot water, especially on somebody's face with the baby oil, a normal reaction would be to wipe your face, and sometimes your flesh actually just melts away when you're actually doing that. Another inmate that, violently, viciously cut by a single-edged razor blade. We used to average 40 to 50 of these a month. And a lot of these stories, a lot of these incidents don't make the paper. So this is one of the reasons why I put the program together, to actually show them what really takes place in prison and break it down from a correction officer's perspective. This inmate right here, they cut him so deep he could stick his tongue through his cheek. You talk about cruel, inhumane. This is somebody, they cut this guy's back wide open. So this is the side that you really don't see in prison. Even now, they have this little scared straight programs. It works to a degree, but unless somebody's telling you, I used to have to wash somebody's dirty underwear for the first 2 years just so I can, smoke a cigarette. Not too many people are going to, tell stories like that. Or I used to get raped for the first 6 months or 8 months while I was in prison. So this is why, I bring this information, because I'm going to give you the truth. And, with this truth, I hope and pray that somebody will be saved for this information. I hope that a parent could actually go onto my website, www.behindtheseprisonwalls.webs.com, and actually get this information off the, offline, and actually sit down with their child and see, this is why you got to take school serious. This is why, you have to abide by the law, because, once you start going through that system, you might not make it back.
And, looking at the images, what came to my mind was how you express your manhood. A lot of times, we come from the neighborhoods. When a man can only exert his power over you because he feels hopeless and powerless, that's what you're looking at. Because it's either pray or be prayed on, because at the end of the day, all that's left is that. Because you have no other way of, your influence, or your manhood, or expressing yourself, all the pent up, aggression comes out in that manner. So even in society with all the shootings and the gang violence, it's the same principle. So you really got to take a real look at this and, visit Mr. Steele's program. It's all over the place, and really take this serious. Life is very short. And one choice could alter it forever.
Now, just out of curiosity, do you have any of these young men that are with you now, that have possibly connected with you, that are speaking out with you? Just out of curiosity.
I have a good friend of mine that I actually take with me when I do my college tours. He did 20 years in prison, and he actually came through Rikers Island. And the reason I bring him with me is because I come from a correction officer's perspective, and he comes from an inmate perspective. So if you could imagine two people, different worlds, different paths, different choices, looking at the same images, you get different perspectives of the whole criminal justice system. Because the image of the guy looking out of the cell, my perspective on that is, I'm on my way home. It's 11:30. I see you later. All right, Mr. Steele, go home. But now, the inmate perspective is, when Mrs. Steele goes home, this is when I cry, because, when they turn the light out at 12 o'clock and, the mice come out and now you're still you're locked in that box for 8 feet, that 8 foot by 6 foot cell, that this is when I cry, so both perspectives must be analyzed and, looked even further, yes.
Wow. I'm speechless. I mean, the in-depth of it as we see it, but we don't really hear about it. But physically seeing this and physically showing this to the youth.
And parents now.
And parents. How has the reaction been from the parents?
I do a lot of parental workshops now because, like Mr. Portwine was stressing that, and working in the public school system, especially with the pre-K first grade, I used to see kids coming into the public school system not knowing how to hold a pencil, not knowing how to sit down in class, not knowing how to write their name. So I'm looking at them and I'm scratching my head. I'm like, wait a minute. So when I used to hear the term school to prison pipeline, you know, I did a little research on it, but nobody really critically analyzed the parenting. But Bill Cosby went there and it condemned him. And they found some Negro on CNN. They talked about, oh, how can Cosby talk about the parents? And all he was saying was, how can you buy your child $200 and $300 pair of sneakers and you don't even have a computer at home? That money could be spent on getting a tutor. And, you know, going back into, if your child doesn't know what they need to know before they get into the system, they are coming into the system behind. And now, when they take that first, third grade state test,
that's how they build
many
their
of them
prisons.
can't pass. And I'm a parent, and I'm going through, my daughter is 8 years old, and she's taking her first state exam. I have anxieties already, but now what I have to do as a parent, I had to turn that TV off because my baby needed help with her homework. So I don't look at it as my child. I look at it as my investment. So what's more important, the sports center, the football game, the basketball game, the distractions that are keeping us from being parents? Or let me turn that TV off and sit down with my child. If she's weak, I'm going to find somebody that can assist my child doing her homework because that's my investment.
And a good thing you said about the Bill Cosby situation is, yeah, CNN is going to ridicule him because they're part, when you talk about these contracts and the privatization of the schools, of the jails, they're a part of that because the owners invest in that. So if you speak against that, if you speak against the wars that they have contracts with General Electric and General Electric owns NBC, you better not give Bill Cosby his just due. You'll be sent packing tomorrow. So it's a whole institution of propaganda that perpetuates everything that we're fighting against and for our children. And people need to understand that as well. These are not all isolated institutions. These are not all isolated incidences. It's one big conglomerate.
And I took a communication course this year in my criminal justice. I said 6 conglomerates control over 85% of what we watch on TV. And that word propaganda. What's the brother's name? Bernays?
Edward Bernays.
Edward Bernays, propaganda, broke it down. They are controlling the way we think and the way we react. So you got to be very careful what you watch on TV.
Right. They're called the pollsters, and what the pollsters' job is to basically give you your ideas, inform your opinions and your tastes.
Thoughts.
Even when you think it's independent, they give it to you.
Okay, Mr. Steele, it's been a pleasure, but one thing I do want to say is, you know, some of the problem is we have babies having babies having babies, and you hit the nail on the head when you said parenting. They don't know anything about parenting, but they wanted to go out and play the sex game. Now, that's a whole nother story because that's something we really need to get into with the youth. But, you know, that's some of the problem. And then now you also, whose grandmom is now 32 and the daughter's now 18, she wants to now be the 18-year-old. And you got the daughters looking at grandma and mom trying to be in dysfunctional family. And, so, you know, we need to address that.
Social dysfunction.
Social dysfunction. So, you know, we have to grow up and take ownership for our kids. And that's the only way in community engagement. Okay, I'm going to keep saying it. Parent engagement is the best way. Your mom came to see about you, so you need to come see about your community and see about your children, your grandchildren, what is going on. Go ahead, and I'm going to wrap it up.
But isn't that how we got through slavery?
That's true. But
I didn't. Okay.
Well, we're going to have a part 2. Tell everybody your information, and then we're going to sign off.
Lorenzo Steele. You can get my information off my website, www.behindtheseprisonwalls.webs.com.
And we want to thank you. Join us next Thursday for Miss Bria Thomas, fashion stylist. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Thursday.